back to the table. So setup is complete, and I'm using a different camera because my setup video is still uploading and I wanted to get going right away. So one thing I forgot to explain during setup is the British control marker goes here, and this means, let's talk about the wind conditions now. So the wind conditions change based on where this marker is. But let's talk about the wind conditions where the marker is now. Where the marker is now, the Prosperity plus Prestige, if it's higher than this, the Duke, the Romans, win. And right here, the Prosperity plus Prestige is 80. So they're already at a winning condition. So the Duke would win the game right now if the epoch ended. Fat chance that that's going to stay there before the epoch's over, but they start the game winning. Okay, blue, the British, the Civitatis, they also start the game sort of winning. So there you can see the British control is 40, and then you can see the little blue line here, and then there's the blue marker. So 37 is all they need to win. And so they actually have some of the conditions to win. But when they're under Roman rule, here's all the ways that Roman rule impacts you. And here you can see that the Duke can get a victory of a Prosperity plus Prestige greater than 75, which we just talked about. Okay. However, the only way the Civitatis can win is if this moves over. Then you can see that the British control has to be greater than 36. Okay. They can't win unless they can figure out a way to move this over. And also, while we're up here in Roman rule, because both of these are Roman rule, these things are all in effect. Britain cooperation, army preemption, roads are maintained, and full recovery. We'll get into what all that means. Actually, the full recovery, I got to think about that one, but I think I know what that is. The military dominance and civilian dominance. Military dominance is this side, and civilian dominance is that side. Think of this as the red team in blue, the Duke and the Civitatis. The Civitatis wants it over here. The Duke wants it over there. Okay? And then that's called autonomy. So you start off with Roman rule, then it degrades to autonomy. And when it does degrade to autonomy, the red victory condition changes. So here you can see it's Prosperity plus Prestige. Here it's Prosperity plus Prestige still, but now it's only 60. So this red marker will actually move down to here. So their victory condition actually got simpler for them. But trust me, it's nothing simple in this game. Okay, so, but that's the thing. So the Duke player, the red player, will have that happen to them. And one of the things I just realized is every red piece should be on the game, and I actually have two of them I just found. So let me look real quick on the map here. Should be one here, and probably one here, I'm guessing. Yes, one there. Okay, back to this. Okay, so so they're pretty straightforward. And yes, the victory conditions do change as the defragmentation happens. And I'm pretty darn sure that once you go down, you never go back up. So it only degrades, it never improves. There might be some crazy event that does that, but I'm not aware of it at this time. So I apologize if I misled you there. Now, how does it move from this side to that side? A lot of that is done here at the end of the epoch. These little steps that I told you needed to understand what they do. Because while you're playing the game, if you understand what happens at the end of the epoch, then you can understand how to manipulate this. Because if you're the blue player, so let's say I'm playing a multiplayer game, and I actually was the blue player, I wanted this to move over, and I'm manipulating the game to make that happen. And what's interesting is the red player is manipulating the game as well, and everybody's doing their thing. But, okay, so when it goes from Roman rule down to autonomy, the Civitatis victory changes to 27. So this blue marker will move all the way down there to 27. So it gets a little easier for them as well. now, then there's full fragmentation. For full fragmentation, this is where everybody's at war with everybody. There are no allies anymore. So the Kibitadi's victory changes to British control of 16. And then the Duke victory is control plus prestige only needs to be 17, which makes it sound like, oh my gosh, it's so much easier than the 75. Trust me, it's not. So many things change when you get down to there. Okay, so now I haven't mentioned the barbarians. The barbarians are different, and it depends on where we are and what fragmentation level it is. But the first thing I want to draw your attention to is you got the Saxons here and all their settlements. That's what these are called. These are called settlements for the barbarians. So these are Saxon settlements, and then those are Scottish settlements. You can see there's this little dotted line around some of them. So they go off one at a time, and you have to start at number 1 and go down. As long as one of these inside the dotted line are on the board, they are meeting this portion of the victory condition. And it tells you that the victory is possible only under Roman rule or autonomy. So the Saxon renown needs to be a certain level, and then you need to have at least 4 settlements on the board. And it's only during Roman rule or autonomy. That's here and here. When it goes under fragmentation, they no longer do a renowned victory. So you can see that it's written right there. Instead, what they do is they start controlling territory. That's the Saxon control here. So this little marker will gradually go up as it controls more and more territory. And once they control 11 territories, they win the game. And in my multiplayer game, that is the player who won, and he did it rather easily. His only thing was he needed it to get to fragmentation. Because the territories were easy for him to maintain. Now, how much renown do they need to have? That's also written on the board. You can see it's right here. Saxon renown, not fragmented, needs to be more than 30. And so I think that's where the other blue marker comes into play. It really should have been black or something. So you can put that there to show that there's a Saxon victory condition. It's a little confusing. But I just leave it out. The Saxon victory condition is you need to have more than 30 renown, which is money, for them, and you need to have 4 settlements on the board. Okay. Now the Scotty are interesting. They have 1 victory condition from start to finish. They have a similar concept. So you see that they got to have 3 settlements on the board, because the 3rd settlement will go into those dotted lines. Okay, that means their victory is possible, but they need to have money all the way blazes up here to 46. So if they can have 3 settlements on the board and 46 money, they will win the game. And it doesn't matter what era it is or anything, and it never changes for them. They are all about the bling. Okay? I think I played a multiplayer game where I was them, and I did horrible. I think some of it is because I'm used to playing the Saxons more than them, and I played them like the way I would play the Saxons, and I had really great settlements and really powerful armies on the board, but none of that matters. All that matters is your money. So I waited way too long. But anyways, so if you're playing a solitaire game as the barbarians, those would be your victory conditions, and I'd have to look it up in the rules, but let me just show you where you will find it. It's in the rear of the rules. After you get past the setup and you start getting into the actual rules, 8.9.1, the very last section of the real rules, it'll explain to you different ways to play solitaire. We're not doing any of these variants here. This one is super easy, this one is easy, and this one is super hard. This one's basically saying you got to play through all the way to the end and you never check for a victory condition at the end of an epoch. I think that's sort of silly. I don't really need that as an option, but it's an option. So this entropy thing, this is what I'm talking about where you splinter. So blue and red, the Kibitadis and the Duke are going to be allied until we hit fragmentation. And you're going to see here that It happens immediately upon fragmentation. Solitaire player running both barbarians do so upon complete execution of the second barbarian pivotal event. So once you play both of the barbarian pivotal events, then you split off, and one of the barbarian factions is going to be controlled by the AI, and it's always the one that's winning. So you always take the one that's losing. A player faction doing better against its victory threshold at that moment becomes a non-player. If tied, the player may choose which faction of the two to continue to play. So I think what that means, at least the way I've always understood it, is you do a victory check here. So right here you do a victory check, and if one player is doing better against its victory threshold at that moment, 7.2, including fragmentation conditions, becomes a non-player. If tied, the player may choose which single faction of the two to continue to play. Okay, another way to interpret this is that as soon as you're meeting your victory conditions, you have to give it up to the AI. It's really difficult because, like I just showed you, the Duke player starts the game meeting its victory conditions right from the start. So if I were to play both the British factions, I would never get to be the Duke. I think what it's trying to do, these coin rules are always confusing, but what it's trying to do, first of all, you now know where to look. So if you want to play as the barbarian factions, there you go. But really what it's trying to say, in my understanding, is you can't win the game while you're playing both factions. So if you get to this end of epoch and you get to this victory check, and let's say you're winning the game, you basically have to give that up to the other, to become an AI, and you have to take on whoever the other faction is that you're controlling. So the game won't end in a victory, but you basically have to give it up because you just met the victory threshold. That's my understanding, is that you can't. So if I'm controlling both the Roman faction and the British faction, I can't win with either the Roman or the British until at some point I've broken apart. And it is possible to win without fragmenting. So if that were to happen, then I have to give up one of the two factions. That's my understanding of that rule. The problem I have with it is it says like you do it immediately, but that would mean that I have to give up the Roman Duke immediately because they're already winning right now. And I don't want to make them a non-player at the start of the game. It is a lot more fun to just control both of these factions. And I'm betting somebody on Board Game Geek may have even asked about that particular rule. Now, it is not necessary to do this where you're controlling two sides and then you splinter. I just recommend it. Because when you're controlling two sides, you're playing them to the best of your ability. There's like a co-op thing that goes on between the British and the Romans. So you can, it feels like a true co-op. So anything you do can help one or the other. The problem with the barbarians just never interact with each other. So it's real easy to play both sides there because you never have a conflict of interest. The Scotty, the land that they invade is not the land that the Saxons are going to invade, and they're very rarely going to even see each other. Okay? So now here's what's interesting. The Duke, when you play multiplayer, the Duke player does not care about the British as much as you're going to care when you play solitaire. That's the one thing I got to tell you. The Duke player, in order to win this game, has to maintain prosperity plus prestige. And I'll get into in a second what that is. But they're not going to get there by helping blue. And here's a couple of things. So, all casualties to available. What this means is anytime a Roman cavalry dies, it's immediately available to be recruited again. there are some situations where they're eventually out of play. Okay, but here, Britain cooperation. Britain cooperation means that the Roman player, the Duke, can spend Blue's money as if it were his own. And here's what I'm talking about. When you're playing both sides as a solitaire player, you're going to be a lot more generous to the Blue player because you're trying to help each other out here. But if you're playing multiplayer, whoever's red is going to say, screw you, and they're going to spend every dollar you have as often as they want. And they're doing it on purpose because they don't want you to have money. If you have money and you eventually accumulate enough wealth, you can flip this over to here, and then that makes the victory conditions favor you if you're blue. So they sort of have this adversarial relationship in a multiplayer game that they don't quite have in a single player. And you could argue, okay, well then fine, we should make them one of them the AI bot. Well, that's not necessarily true either. I just play it, tell me what your thoughts are, but there's some multiplayer components to this game that plays very different. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so army preemption means that they can actually move each other's armies as well. And they can actually choose to bring other people's armies into their battle. They do need permission. Do they need permission? No, they don't need permission. They can just choose. So the Dukes can choose to kill off the blue armies so their armies don't die and stuff like that. Okay, the roads are always maintained and there's always full recovery. And now we'll get into what that means in a second and what the roads mean. So what is prosperity? What is prestige? Okay, prosperity are these gold cubes. That's what I was telling you counts as like the wealth. But I should stop using the word wealth because the Kibitatis actually has a wealth meter. That's a little, see it says right there, wealth, that little blue token. So they actually measure wealth. So this is, I need to use the proper term, this is prestige, or not, I'm sorry, prosperity. So how prosperous is the land? And right now it's very. It's 80 in fact. Now prestige is what the, let's talk about the units real quick. They have cavalry units. That's what these red units are. They're very powerful. They're the strongest unit in the game in most situations. The cavalry units and the way the Dukes players, they have like this honor code. And so, for example, if barbarians are stealing this prosperity and they're going to, if they make it back, they get to plunder this for wealth, right? Or for money, for them, or renown. If the cavalry ends up taking one of these back, right? They kill off the barbarians. Let's say the barbarians were carrying all 4 of these. They kill the barbarians. What they do is they'll restore one of these back to the city because that's what prestige is all about. The prestige for them is about helping the people and about doing great deeds of renown, right? These gold cubes are considered renown for the barbarians. So if these gold cubes are brought back to their homeland, they go up on the money track. That's how they get their money, and it's called renown. I call it money, but in the game it's called renown, and so don't want to get anybody confused there. Now, the Kibitatis, on the other hand, don't have prestige. They don't give a crap about prestige, so they can actually plunder this stuff for themselves in some situations. I'm not going to get into all the situations. We'll never get the game going. So just very important to understand, these are forts, and those are cavalry, and these are the Duke forts, okay? These are towns. These are what's called hill forts. So a hill fort is different than a fort, and both of those are different than a town. I'm not going to get any more detailed than that because I know many of you just want to see the game get started. So we'll just call it that. And then these are militia units. And then there's comitats, which are those are not in the game yet. Those are like the elite British units, which don't exist yet. They're actually the second best unit in the game. The cavalry have the ability to move along roads. So here you can see that there's the roads throughout the empire here, and it goes all the way up to here, but it doesn't go into the Highlands, right? The Scottish Highlands, and there's some provinces like Dumanoni over there. So there's no roads there, but the point I'm trying to make is that the cavalry have like this ability to move infinitely along the road. So I can take cavalry from here and attack something all the way at the other end of the map, all in one turn. So as long as the roads are maintained, they have huge mobility. And that's what I'm talking about when I go through these. The full recovery means that the prestige, after these towns are plundered, the barbarians steal the prestige, not prestige, I'm sorry, prosperity. They steal the prosperity away. Well, during the epoch, there's a full recovery, which means every gold cube gets restored. So all these cities get back to full strength, prosperity. Here, it's limited recovery, which means they only get some of it back. They don't get all of it. And then the road maintenance is up to the player. The player has to decide to pay for the roads. It's no longer a free, the Romans are no longer covering the cost for free. It's now, I think, so this is where the Roman Empire is still in existence. They haven't fallen yet. So now Roman Empire has fallen and you're under autonomy, meaning we're basically just taking care of ourselves. There's still the Roman dukes, here trying to have military dominance, but we no longer get the money from the Roman Empire to maintain the roads. So then you have to pay for it. So this is an extremely important part of the board to understand, and as each change happens, more and more stuff occurs. Like even down here, there's no British cooperation, there's no preemption, there's no roads, no invites, and limited. Basically, fragmentation is all out war. It's anarchy. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that anymore. And I know I told you that you need to understand every one of these before you play the game. And I know some of you might be groaning, but it's true. And every coin game is this way. It's not just this one. So you're going to have to bear with me. During every intermission, things happen. So if you go along the path there's this Anana. Okay, so the Duke and the British factions, both of them, have to pay resources to place plunder on any Federati troop. So basically, if you own a Federati troop, you have to pay. If you fail to pay, but given not carrying plunder, all Federati markers of that color from that nation's pieces are removed. Then transfer plunder carried by the Federati to the renown of that barbarian nation. So basically, the mercenaries stop working for you, and they become loyal to their home nation. Okay, and then there's things like this. The Civitatis may transfer British resources up to half, rounded up, the number of towns to wealth. Okay, so first of all, you have to count how many towns you have. Here you can see they're starting the game with 13 towns on the board. So half rounded up is 7, right? So they could transfer British resources up to 7 of them to wealth 1 for 1. What's a British resource? It's that thing. They start the game right now with 25. So you need to know that you want to keep some British resources by the time the epoch ends, because then you can exchange them 1 for 1 for wealth. Why do you want wealth? Well, if you look here, this is telling you that the Roman rule moves to autonomy. These are the checks that cause it to move towards fragmentation. But the part that you need to understand here is if the Civitatis have less than or equal to 5 wealth, it stays as military dominance. but it moves over to here if they start to get more wealth. So you need wealth to move that marker from military dominance to civilian dominance. And I know this is boring, and I know you want to play, but you got to understand these things, or we can't really start. So right here, if the wealth minus the prestige, so you actually subtract the two. If it's greater than 10, then shift any military dominance to civilian. If the wealth minus the prestige is less than 5, shift the civilian to military. Obviously, if it's neither of those, then it just stays wherever it is. Okay, and then you do a victory check, and we already discussed that. The epoch event occurs, and then there's revenue. And so you're going to get increased prestige by 5 if you're under Roman rule or 2 under autonomy. So the Duke gains prestige just for keeping Roman rule, and then they still get some if it's under autonomy. Now, pay attention, this is after the victory condition check. So the prestige thing, this +5 prestige might have been enough for them to win the game, but it's after we check for a victory. So you got to wait until the end of the next epoch, okay? So it doesn't help you to win the game, but it's just something, there's all these things that happen here. And we'll get into these later. I think the thing I really wanted to help you pay attention to is how to move and manipulate this thing, okay? The other, there actually is one other thing. You got to understand that the Duke have to pay 1 resource for each fort in the game, or otherwise they get removed. And if they're under autonomy, they have to pay 10 resources to maintain the roads, or otherwise they lose the maintenance of the roads. And once the maintenance of the roads is lost, by the way, it never comes back. It's gone forever. Okay, and then for the Civitatis, the one thing I remember you need to, right here, in each space, remove 1 in 3 militia rounded down to available. So if you have spaces on this board that have 4 militia, you're going to lose one of them because you have to lose 1 in 3 rounded down. If you have, well, let me think about that. If it's 3, even if you have 3 on the board, you still lose 1, right? Yeah, 1 in 3. So right now we got a lot of, like this situation here, there's 4 of them. One of these is going to basically just go away. It's, what do they call that? It's, they desert, or I don't know, are no longer in service. But it's very important because you're going to see players, like there's a lot of prosperity here, right? There's 6, in fact. There's 6 prosperity there. You might see a player start to do something like this because they really want to defend against the barbarians because they're tired of the barbarians coming after their prosperity. Well, that's fine and dandy, but then a whole bunch of these units are going to die at the end of the epoch. And every time I played this, especially in multiplayer, the player who plays as the Blue British, they get angry because they don't pay attention to that particular thing. And I tell everybody before we start, you got to know this. And anyways, hopefully you'll remember that in your game. And you'll say, thanks, Jeff. Okay, so let's get started. First thing that we do is we draw an event card, okay? Like I said, the game goes and goes until we run out of cards or until somebody wins at each of the epochs. There's 6 of them in the game. So we draw the top card, which is going to be here. And then the other card I like to place on top. You always get to see what the next card's going to be. And we may need a better system. I'll move the camera over. Okay, so who gets to go first? The player order is determined by the card. So red, blue, black, and then green. That's the player order, and it's determined by this card. And only 2 players get to go. So this is another interesting thing. So for this turn, if red and blue both go, they don't have to, they could do this thing called passing, then black and green actually have to wait and go the next time. Okay? So that's one thing to understand. The next thing about this is you have to pay attention to the symbols. So here you can see swords through these 2. And what that means is if you're controlling the AI bots, they're interested in this card only if conditions are met. That's what the swords mean. And then these little shields, you can see around the spear, there's actually like a shield on the outer edge, like a little circle. Those are shields. What that means is black and green desperately want to do this card. This is like a must play for them. So let's look at the card. So the event says, positive religious doctrine. They can add prosperity equal to population in each of 4 regions. Or heresy. Remove all non-federati civitati pieces from any 2 spaces. Ooh, okay. So these 2 different events, you only get to pick one, and the way it generally works, you can choose whichever one you want to do, but generally speaking, the top one here that's lighter is for the British factions. The darker one is for the barbarian factions. So the barbarians, if they do get to play this event, are going to want to do this one. And what this is saying is any non-mercenary, right, that's what the federati are, they get to remove all of them from any 2 spaces. So they can literally just go, okay, these 3 are dead. And that is very awful. So us playing as the British player, we do not want to let either of the barbarians have this card. Okay, now we also get to peek the next card. The next card, you can see that green desperately wants to play this one. Okay, it's titled Barbarians. So green really wants to play this one, and green gets to go first. So there's nothing we can even do to screw them over on this situation. It also shows that the British factions would like to play this card. All right, Jason, enough. He's saying hello. So the top one is remove 5 Saxon pieces from 1 region. The bottom one is the Scotty gets to place a settlement and 2 warbands at 1 vacant hill fort site in the various coastal regions. So that is actually a really nice one for green. So green, if you were a human player, you're really happy with the start of this game because this card is awesome, and so is that one. And even if they screw you over and don't let you have this card, they will for sure can't stop you there because you get to go first. Green gets to go first. There. Okay, so what are the choices? And for those of you who know coin games, I apologize. You may want to just skip forward a little bit. I'll move the camera when I'm done so that way you know when to stop. Okay, so when you're going, you pick one of these 3 pathways. And whichever pathway you pick, the next player has to do the next pathway choice. Okay, so for example, red gets to go first, so red can say, I'm going to go here. And so then blue gets to go second, so blue would have to go there, or they always have the option to pass. Okay, and that's the situation that would allow black to get a chance to go, even though according to the card, they're not, the first or second player. Okay, so what are the different choices here? And this is where a lot of the cool coin strategy is. It's more cool in multiplayer because in single player, the AI cheats. They absolutely cheat on you. And so it really sucks in that regard. But in a multiplayer, they can't cheat. And so this has a lot more strategic value. Here, I'll explain why. So when we do a command, so let's say I'm going to do muster. Okay, see how it has the plus rule or invite? This is a primary command, and then this is a feat. Okay, so what's saying is if I do a muster, I can also do a rule, or I can do a muster and also do an invite. Okay, so I can do a command plus a feat normally, and then when I do a command, it says I can do in as many spaces as I want. Okay, with 2 resources per space, so I have to spend money, but I can go to as many as I want and do this muster command. Okay, so now let's go back to this, and it'll make more sense. And I apologize to whoever was fasting forward. I moved my camera. So my apology, I'm not quite done. So fast forward again. So here it says the first faction command only. So so you only get to do the command. You don't get to do the feat. So here it says no feat. So you could do a command. You can do it on as many spaces as you want, but no feat. Okay. So why would I do that? Why would I restrict myself from being able to do a feat? Well, maybe I don't want to do a feat, so that's where it helps me. But here's the real reason. This is how you play that event card. If I go here, look here, there is no option to play the event card. So if I know that black or green wants to play this event card, I can go here. Yes, it hurts me because I can't do a feat, but I hurt them and they're not able to play the event card. So screw you, right? And in multiplayer, this is big. Now, this one is a limited command. This is even worse. You get to do a faction command, but it's limited, meaning you can only go to one space. So remember I just told you I can muster as many spaces as I wanted? Well, there I can only muster one space. And whatever command I pick, I can only do it on one space. So this one is very restrictive. So usually you'll find when somebody plays this card, they're playing defense. Or I'm sorry, if somebody goes here, they're playing defense because they don't want this event card to be played. That's what they're doing. They're preventing the event from happening. Okay? Now, the problem that creates is nobody wants to go here because this is a very crappy, you get to do a command and you only can do it in one space. So that's awful. Okay, so not everybody's going to want to take advantage of that. And so you may see 3 people pass. Now, what happens then? Okay, so this card goes away, and then this card becomes the active card. Well, then this goes into ineligible. So then for this second card here, only those factions that are left are available to take a turn. He doesn't get to take a turn. He has to wait one whole turn before he goes back. Okay, that's how this plays out. Now, I said that the AI cheats. The AI cheats because this space here, the AI gets to do, this space is identical to that space for them. They can do unlimited commands, spaces. So they can go to as many spaces as they want if they go here, which anybody in multiplayer or even yourself in this solitaire game, you're not allowed to do, but the AI can. Okay, and some of those variants I was just showing you way back when, regarding easier rules would have allowed you to do this and still enforce it against the AI. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who you are or what your comfort level is, but let the AI cheat. I think you're going to find the game is a nice challenge if you do that. Okay. Now, this one you can see is a faction command plus a feat. So you get to do your command plus a feat. Now, the second player can do a faction event or limited command. So the limited command is, again, only one place, but they can actually play the card. So this is what you want to do if you know, okay, red and blue, we're teaming up together. I will do this, which gives me a full command plus feat, which is like the best thing in the game to do. And then you get to play the event. So la-di-da, and then we get to screw the barbarians, right? So this is like a really nice combo punch. But if you know that blue is over here and you're going here, you're allowing the barbarian to get access to this. And so that could be a very dangerous move. Okay? And then down here, it's the same deal. You get to play the event card. So this is the first player that is saying, I'm playing the event for me. And then the second player can do any command and may add a feat. So basically, this is a full command just like that. So the only place that the AI cheats is right here. But that's a huge place to be cheating. All right, so we go first. It's red, and I'm going to move the camera just to let people know that they can stop fast forwarding. We're going first, and it's red, the Duke player. I can tell you with certainty that the top row here is not good. It's a good thing for us if we were already rated by barbarians and lost some prosperity, but we are at maximum prosperity right now. So this event card does nothing for the red or the blue player. The heresy, though, is huge for the barbarian. So being able to remove all pieces from any two spaces. Okay, let's clarify what pieces means. That's the forts too. That's these things. So they get to remove all pieces, and from any two spaces. That is just ridiculously powerful. So we can't let them have it. All right, so what I can do is, since I know that the blue player gets to go second, I can choose to go here and get a full command and a feat. Then the blue player can get to at least do the same thing he would get to do here, but he could also play the event if he somehow wanted to, which he doesn't want to. So I can do that, and red and blue can conspire together, and we know that they're not going to get a turn. Okay, we're controlling both of those factions, so we get to choose to do that if we want. Now, if this was a multiplayer game and I'm only playing red, the safe bet is to go here, because here is the only pathway that doesn't allow the event card to be played. Because what can happen is I can go here and the blue player can say, well, screw that, I don't want to do that. They'll pass. And by passing, they get +3 resources, where the barbarians actually get renown for passing, and they stay here on the eligibles track. Okay, so by passing, the blue player could pass, and so if I went here, the blue player can pass, and then black goes and says, hey, I'll play the event. And next thing you know, the game started out completely differently than the way you wanted it. So we control both the factions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this, and the blue player will do that. And the reason being is that this next card, they're going to go first. So if we pass this round, we may not even get to go next turn. And by this happening, these guys don't get to pass. They don't get anything. They're just going to sit there ineligible. So we're sort of screwing them over, at least for one turn. Okay? And they would screw us over this next round because both of them would go here. And so there is no benefit to passing. That's the bottom line. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We do it one at a time. So we get to do a faction command plus feat. And then we get to do a limited command with blue. Okay, so what's our situation? The barbarians are nowhere on the map. There's nothing to kill. There's full prosperity, so there's nothing to replace or replenish. So I can tell you that the blue player wants to build more towns and forts, and the red player has every piece on the board. So there's nothing even for them to build or even do. So this is an interesting one. The red player actually wanted to pass. But let's look at our commands. So the first thing we can do is train. So what you get to do is in each space we could pay 3 resources to place 1 cavalry per fort, or if it's a town or hill fort we can do up to 2 militia. So we can actually place militia on behalf of the Civitatis, which is an interesting concept. Then we pay 2 resources and up to 2 regions with friendly control and add prosperity there equal to population. So this is, again, how we can put prosperity back on the board. So we haven't lost any prosperity. And then this goes with build, invite, or requisition. So build lets you place a fort or replace 2 militia or 1 hill fort and 1 militia with a town. And gain 2 prestige. So see, that's part of our winning the game, is getting prestige. So we want to do that. So developing the area is good for us. So build is good. Invite is hiring mercenaries, which is the Federati. I don't want to do that yet. And then requisition is for each of up to 6 bases with Civitati strongholds, transfer 1 British resource or 1 wealth if the British resource is at 0, plus all plundered carried by any Duke's 0 to Duke's resources. So what this is a really nasty thing that multiplayers do. We get to basically steal resources from blue, make the blue marker go down, and then the red marker goes up. The red player gets to spend all of the blue player's money or resources, but the blue player doesn't get to spend the red player's resources. So if you're playing multiplayer, the red player is just building up this hoard of cash, and they're doing it greedily. I mean, it helps nobody but themselves. So this is something where, like I said, there is this tension between the two. They're not always supposed to be cooperative, but that is a way that you can get the red player to become, basically once this fragmentation starts happening and they have to start spending their own resources and they don't get to spend blue's resources anymore, then they have a whole bunch of resources saved up. That's a thing you can do, and that's what requisition is. It's a really nasty one. If you're a Kivitades player, you don't like it at all. And you can do it up to 6 spaces. So basically you can steal 6 resources that way. So March is moving troops, and it doesn't require roads. But if you have roads, you can go along them at outset, and then you can actually go 1 space beyond a road. That's what March is. Intercept is a move with an attack. So, but it has to be along roads. So you have to start on a road, end on a road. You can't go off the road, and that'll let you get to do both moving and attacking in the same turn. Okay, and then last one is battle, and that's if you have cubes on a space and the enemy has cubes on the same space, you can battle them. But remember, March is just March. There's no battle with this, so you could actually move into a space with other cubes, and then on a later turn you would do battle. So it's actually multiple turns. The red player, this intercept is super cool. So next thing, barbarians. These guys, everybody has a home turf. Their home turf is this marshland. So they want the marshland. They get combat bonuses in marshland. The cavalry get combat penalties in marshland. They get bonuses in regular plains, which are these territory types. So the cavalry fight better in those. So they have some cavalry defending marshlands here, but it's not their strongest suit. The Scotty are best in the mountains. And then you might be thinking, well, what about the British? Well, the Kivitades, they don't really have a bonus anywhere. There are some events that can allow them to have bonuses in the mountains. But as of right now, they don't have anything anywhere. Okay, so, and these are pretty weak troops too. Okay, so what do we want to do? I think we want to do train, and then we'll do build. And we're going to do this because it helps us from a cooperative perspective, and it actually helps me to score points towards winning the game, which I don't have to do requisition just yet. So the train here, it has to be a space with a fort or friendly control, 3 resources per space for troops, 2 for prosperity. Okay, in each space, pay 3 resources to place 1 cavalry. I don't have any more cavalry. Or if there's a town or hill fort, up to 2 militia. That's what I want to do, and we're going to do it in 3 spaces. And there's exactly 6 militia here. Okay, so that's where these little markers come in. So we have to do a place that has a fort and a town. So there's a fort in the town there. So there's 1. I'm looking around. There's a fort in the town here for 2. And there's a fort in the town here for 3. I like all 3 of those places. This is actually another good spot right there. But I like those places I picked. So now what I'm going to do is I get to put 2 militia in each one of those spaces. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do this per the rules. Okay, so I've marked where I'm going to do my primary action. Now I have to mark where my feet's going to be. This is 3 resources per square, or space. I can pay 3 resources to place a fort. I don't have any forts. Or replace 2 militia, or 1 hill fort and a militia with a town. Oh, that's right, I want to make a town, don't I? I can't do that in places where I just placed troops. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so then I'm going to put this here. The gray means this is the feet location. And I can do this on as many spaces as I want, but there's not that many spaces. And here's the other thing. This is a place for a fort, and you can tell by the white banner, okay? The places for towns have a dark banner. See how this has a dark banner and that one's a white banner? The towns can only go where there's dark banners. And if you move these out of the way, it says town right there on the space. Now, this one says town, but it has a fort. That is possible. And actually, the Kibitatis want to destroy this fort at some point so they can replace it with a town. But that's longer down the road. Okay, so one place I can definitely do it is here. So I'm looking at that one. And where else can I build a town that has 2 militia or 1 militia and a hill fort? That's the trick. So, oh, there is another one. And sorry, I was looking at the, I think that's all the more I can do. Like, I would love to do one here, right? But this is not a space for a town. So you're restricted in where you can go. Now, I could do something like here. I can replace 1 militia and 1 hill fort with a town, but pay attention, there's no spot for a town in either of those places. So as much as that looks great, there's not that many spots for towns. A lot of towns are already built. And in fact, I forgot, look at this, I can only build 2 towns. There's only 2 left to be built. So we're done. Okay, so let's do the train. Just as a reminder, the train is 3 resources per space. So we are doing 1, 2, 3, so that's 9. And I'm going to go ahead and just pay for the next one. This is 3 resources per space, so that's 6 more. That's 15 resources. So we're at 25. So we go down to 15 and then 10, right? That was 15 resources. So now we're down to 10. So we spent a lot of their money, and that's what the Romans do. So first thing we do is we're going to put 2 troops into each of these marsh spaces, which actually they do better in the marsh than the cavalry. So this is not a bad move at all to do that. And then we pick up our white pieces. And then in these gray pieces, we're going to basically kill off 2 troops. They're not dead, you know what I mean. But they go back off the board. And when you play coin games, this putting on cubes and removing cubes is pretty standard. So if that doesn't appeal to you, you're not going to like a coin game. But what's cool about what I just did is I get to put a town on each of these spots. Now, towns actually help the Kivitati player as much as they help the Duke player. But here you can see that the Duke player gets +2 prestige, and that's for each space. So we go over to the prestige here, and he's going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. And that means his win condition, he's at 80 right now. So now he's going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So the prosperity plus prestige is now at 84. So that's a really good move for red. And it had a great cooperative mindset as well, because we strengthened a lot of the places the Saxons are going to try to raid. That's actually a fabulous move for opening the game. Okay, so now we go to blue, the Kivitatis. Now, they have different commands. They have muster, march, trade, and battle. March and battle are almost identical. They are allowed to pick up cavalry, as you can see here. If the Dukes agrees and it's not fragmentation, they can pick up cavalry. Militia move 1 space, others may move several along the roads. Okay, so the militia only get to move 1 space no matter what you do. They don't really take advantage of the road as much. Battle is battle. Trade. Any space with a town. The cost is 0 resources, 1 resource per space for prosperity. So they get to add 1 British resource per town in target spaces. Then up to 2 selected spaces with British control, they can pay 1 resource to add prosperity back to the town. So this is nice when the barbarians have already taken prosperity, but we're maxed out in prosperity. So there's no... Now you might be wondering, well, Jeff, what's this 10 prosperity doing over here? One thing I haven't pointed out is this is a population of 2. See that there? That 2 means the population is 2, and therefore you can have 2 resources, which there's 2 rows of it, but you can only go 2 out. This third one is only possible if we somehow add another population, and that's only done through events. And there's some actions you can actually, no, I'm sorry, you have to do it through events. The refugees, you can start moving population from one place to another. Okay, and then in some rare situations you can actually grow. And by the way, right here is an awesome summary of the victory conditions for all 4 factions. And this is true for even in solitaire. Okay, so what the heck does blue want to do? And remember, blue is limited to just a limited command, so meaning they can only do it in one location. So what they're going to do is they're going to, well, actually, muster or trade. Add 1 British resource per town in target space. So if they did a trade, for example, here, they would get to add 2 resources. That's not an awful lot, but they could do it. And the one nice thing about it is, let's say that they had unlimited command, they could have basically picked all 13 places that have towns. So what we typically do there is we don't bother putting pieces out. It's just we know there's 15 towns on the board. So if they had unlimited commands and not a limited command, they could do this and they'll gain 15 resources. Boom. It's super nice. So for now, I think what we're going to do is we have 4 here, so we're going to muster. It's 2 resources per space. Remember, he can only do 1 space. And the thing that we're concerned about is we destroyed all the troops here, and this is a super lucrative town with 6 prosperity, and there's no troops defending it. So we're going to muster that location. So we're going to spend 2 resources, move down to 8, and then it says place 1 militia per town and hill fort, plus if British control, place 1 militia per town and hill fort, plus if British control 1 per population, and or pay 1 more wealth each to place comitatus instead. We don't have any wealth, so we can't do that. Or if valid site with more friendly than barbarian pieces, replace 1 militia with a hill fort. So we can actually put hill forts on the board. And or pay 2 more wealth to replace either 2 militia or 1 militia with a hill fort. Okay, so one of the things you can do is, like, for example, I could replace this militia here. Let me, yes, I can replace that militia. It would come off the board, and then a hill fort, which looks like this, I could put on that space. So now I'd have 2 hill forts there. That's something that's an option for me when I do this muster command. But I want to get troops here. So what it says is I can get to place 1 for each town or hill fort. So there's 2 there. But it also says I get to place 1 for each population if it's under British control. So that means I get to place 3 more. I could have placed 5 troops there if I wanted, but I'm going to go ahead and place 4. So I effectively got all my armies on the board right now. There's still a few spots that are weakly defended, like Dobruni here has no armies at all. But I'm pretty happy with this start. This limited command stinks. If I were able to do an unlimited command, there's a lot of other options we could do. And anyways, I know this was an hour, and I spent an hour doing just 1 turn. I promise the rest of the turns won't be so bad because we've explained a lot of the rules. The one set of rules that we haven't explained yet are the battles. And I'm not going to get into those until we actually have a battle, so don't worry about that. But yes, I think we're off to a decent start, and I apologize if this was too slow for some of you, but this is not a minor game. Some people do that entire playthrough that's in the playthrough book just to learn this game. And trust me, that will take you way longer than an hour to do. So I hope you're finding this helpful. So at the end of the turn, what happens is, I'm going to move some stuff here off camera. So what happens is this card is out of play, and this one is the Epoch card we didn't use. So let me put that over there. So this card's out of play. Right? Never going to see it again. It's just discarded. But we do put it here because I think you can count how many cards we've gone through, you know, because of the whole when's the epoch going to end thing. And then what happens is this moves over. So these guys are ineligible. So this next turn, they are, red and blue are not eligible to play. So green and black get to go if they want to. They don't have to. They can still pass. But I can guarantee you green for sure will be doing this event, and then black will have to figure out what he does. So I'm going to go ahead and end here. My other camera is available again, so I'm going to switch to that. And thanks for watching. Stay awesome. And I hope you're enjoying this so far. This is a pretty fun coin game. So I hope this is going to help you to get into your copy or to at least experience what one is like. See ya.